African savannah. Home to the greatest land animals on Earth. Where this young woman is on the tracks of a tiny zoological riddle. The burning sands of East Africa. A mysterious mammal lives here, the size of a mouse, that breaks all the rules of its genus. Mocked for its appearance, it's been called a sand puppy, an adult embryo, a walking finger. In fact, it looks like this because it's perfectly adapted to its habitat. The naked mole rat. Almost hairless, shaped like a sausage with a loose and wrinkled skin and big teeth for digging, mole rats are neither moles nor rats. Their closest relatives are guinea pigs. Not that you'd guess. They live underground in long tunnel systems. Their living quarters are a football-sized chamber called a nest, ruled over by a queen who's bigger than all the others. Yes, naked mole rats are mammals that behave just like insects. What else? Small ears and tiny eyes so no one can kick sand in them. The long whiskers help them navigate and direct their most important tool, those teeth. And almost every one is the offspring of a single queen, and just like in an insect colony, each has his role, worker, chambermaid, or soldier. But we're digging too far. Much of this was unknown just 5 years ago. Rosie Koch, a biology student, was watching TV at home in Germany when she came across something she'd never seen before. Ugly and beautiful at the same time, the naked mole rats tugged at her heartstrings.
I have never seen anything like a naked mole rat before, and I thought it must be a joke because anything existing like that seemed to be very strange. So I started to run out and try and find out as much as I could about them.
At first, her research turned up very little. A drawing here, a couple of sentences there. Mole rats were nature's footnotes. No one found them worthy of study. Until she came across a book written by Edward Rüppel in 1842. He drew the mole rats covered with fur, convinced he'd caught a baby. He gave them their Latin name, Heterocephalus glaber, the strange bald heads. Rosie was hooked. Dresden Zoo, scene of Rosie's first encounter with the real thing. It's one of the few zoos that bothers with a creature that looks as if it's escaped from a comic book. And here they are. A whole colony squeezed into a few meters of perspex and plywood tunnels. Even the adults looking exactly like embryos. The have no problem adapting to the environment. They can't go forth, but they do multiply. They don't need a lot, just a steady temperature and a regular supply of their favorite vegetables. But Rosie wanted to visit them at home, so she applied to the Naked Mole Rat Field Study Program at Washington University, St. Louis, USA. The only people studying mole rats in the wild today. She knew the artificial environment of the plastic piping would tell her nothing. Here there was no greater danger than the squeals of delighted children and an occasional tapping on the pipes. And in the zoo they were even protected from that by non-stop music from a transistor radio. How different from their home life in Africa. In East Africa, they're supporting actors to the stars above ground. They're quite particular where they go, though. They only live in the savannas of Kenya, Ethiopia, and Somalia. Places where it's hot, dry, and the earth is hard, and they have no competitors. And they only come up for air at the end of the short rainy season, when the ground is softer. A single mole rat colony is as big as a football field with up to 3 kilometers of tunnels. They dig, dig, dig for edible roots. Sometimes it's difficult to see who's giving the orders. Anarchy in the mole rat monarchy. Zoologists once believed that a colony lived in genetic isolation for generations, just like insects. But that would be unheard of in mammals. For 5 years, Rosie globetrotted between St. Louis and Kenya, compiling and comparing data on different colonies. Eventually she noticed that marked mole rats from one colony would sometimes appear in another. On this 5th trip, she wants to test her theory, that mole rats leave their colonies, and this unexpected communication between colonies keeps them all healthy. And whether you're a human or a mole rat, you have to prepare your journey. It can be a tough environment.
Out there's really no way for me to buy it. It's not like going on vacation where usually you can say, okay, if I forget something, I just buy it. But out there's nothing to buy, and you have to have all your medication and all those things with you. If you don't, you're screwed.
7 hours out of Nairobi lies Meru National Park. On this 5th annual trip, Rosie has one priority: to solve the mystery of the traveling mole rats. Do some mole rats really swap colonies in order to broaden the gene pool? The park is in the heart of the Kenyan savannah. It's a landscape formed by ancient volcanoes and dominated by craters. Both large and small. These fist-sized craters are the unmistakable sign of an active mole rat colony. Just after the rainy season, they're at their most active, digging tunnels to new food supplies. They work in long chains, one mole rat kicking the earth back to the next until it reaches the exit. They can work like this for hours on end. They're aiming for the sweet potatoes that are this underground army's favorite food. That's why farmers like Rose Kaemba hate naked mole rats and devote a good deal of their time to keeping them at bay. But it's not easy. She can only attack if she knows where they are. Knives won't do the trick. The queen simply pipes the signal to retreat and is obeyed instantly. She's in charge of every detail of the colony's life, first and foremost maintaining her own position. She will intimidate or attack any other female who attempts to mate. She may reign for more than 20 years, an incredible age for a rodent, and in that time she may have 1,000 offspring. Within 2 months, the young are at work, cleaning and stocking food. They learn new tasks, and they learn to recognize dangers and to pass on information through their whistles. Above ground, Rosie and her assistant Job are looking for active mole rat volcanoes. They need patience and sharp eyes. The search can take hours. Because in a year, a colony can dig its way to a new position. Much to the fury of farmers like Rose Kaemba. Mole rats are extremely hardy creatures. In fact, as Rosie has learned, they seem to experience pain less than other rodents. Another one of the genetic puzzles that fascinates mole rat scientists. When a mole rat breaks into another colony's tunnel in his search for food, it's time for the soldiers to move in. The interloper is betrayed by his scent. Now there are 2 possible outcomes. Either he'll be dragged away and enslaved, or he'll be ejected. Sharp teeth do their work. This one is thrown out by the defender. It could have been worse. Sometimes interlopers are killed. This one beat a tactical retreat. Rosie has reached her first stop. It's one of her old colonies, number 2C. She sets to work at once, quickly and quietly so as not to alarm the mole rats. She scrapes out the tunnel mouths, making space for juicy chunks of sweet potato. Tomorrow she'll set the traps. And keep an eye out for the buffaloes. The next morning, Rosie tests her homemade traps one last time. Plastic tubes with a door triggered by a light sensor. They snap shut when a mole rat enters to eat the potato. She sprinkles sand on the bottom of the tube to perfect the illusion. In go the traps at all the tunnel exits. It has to be done fast before the mole rats become suspicious, and quietly so they don't get nervous. The traps are armed. And now for the toughest part of the work, the long wait. Whose nerves will break first?
Rats can hear extremely well, so they would hear when we're talking or doing anything. Also, they can feel the vibrations of our walking or putting something on the ground. And in order not to disturb them, we have to be far away so they walk into our traps.
On Rose Kaemba's smallholding, the conflict is escalating. Usually the water drains away before the mole rats drown. And anyway, they can swim. When things get tough, they help drag each other out of the mud. Okay, it's not nice, but this is no way to get rid of mole rats. The experts are still waiting. Mole rats spend a lot of time resting. Hours can go by before they make a move. It's still preoccupying Rosie. These mole rats show no inclination to leave the colony, yet some must. The mole rats are resting. They huddle round the queen, sharing warmth in this cooler season. Mole rats are the only mammals that can't regulate their own body temperature, and most of the year they don't need to. A meter under the ground, the temperature stays at a steady 30 degrees centigrade. They cope with small changes in temperature by moving to a different chamber. but Rosie knows the irresistible scent of sweet potato will eventually make them careless. Curiosity and hunger get the better of one mole rat. He walks into the trap. The first mole rat in the trap is a new one for Rosie. She's not surprised. Other animals remember the traps, and the younger ones will learn fast.
We have to take the mole rat out of the trap very quickly so it doesn't warn the other mole rats that there is a trap.
Job and Rosie pick them up gently by the tail. At first they get one a minute, then the gaps get longer and longer. The average colony has about 80 animals, but there may be as many as 300. Outside the tunnel, the mole rats are kept in buckets and shielded from the sun. The mole rats huddle together. Some grind their teeth, perhaps a sign of stress. The chips are down on Rosa's plot. Gasoline, the ultimate weapon. The acrid stench seeps into the tunnel system. The mole rats don't like it and beat a retreat. Only to build new passages and new mini-volcanoes nearby. It's a limited success for Rose. At least they're temporarily off her land. Rosie and Job have caught almost the entire colony. As the last few emerge, there are more and more surprises. This scorpion isn't a permanent inhabitant. Even poisonous insects only dare enter the colony once the soldier mole rats have left. The next eruption is a human one. Game wardens are building a road for tourists on safari. Rosie's now waiting for the queen to emerge, but to the game wardens, this is a bizarre activity for a white woman. It doesn't look quite right. There's a cautious approach. Like most Kenyans, they've never seen naked mole rats. The drivers are interested in the creature's digging techniques. How do they manage to shift so much earth without a bulldozer? Rosie shows the men the mole rat's powerful rear legs. Is that all? The men have their doubts. A quick glance at the bucket convinces them. The wardens drive on, unaware that another transport industry is active underground. These beetles are the only tenants the mole rats are prepared to share with. Anything else is chased or bitten away. Rosie has discovered they live in every mole rat colony. They live in the chambers, and the mole rats carry them throughout the tunnel system, especially to the toilet chambers. The beetles consume the mole rat's waste. A perfect cooperation. Rosie has to capture several colonies simultaneously to get comparable data. Up to a dozen every dry season, over the space of a few square miles. That's more than 1,000 animals. And sometimes the mole rats make it harder for her by going walkabout in the hot sun. In this heat, they won't last minutes. Rosie has to make sure she's protected from the sun too. And she has to pay attention to all the animals around her. Elephants, especially, are always treated with respect. A few years ago, an elephant was a rare sight, but thanks to the ban on ivory hunting, they're back in force. For the tourists, a lone researcher in the bush is almost as interesting as a big cat. For Rosie, they're an unwelcome interruption. Big feet walking all over her mole rat colonies. Once again, Rosie explains their behavior and habitat. The mole rats win new fans. But the Kenyan guide isn't convinced.
I don't know because I've never seen them, but I've seen them right now, and to my understanding, they are nice animals. Despite I don't know whether they spoil vegetables or whatever. I don't know.
Perhaps they'll be on the guide's itinerary next year. But now it's time for Rosie and Job to catch the queen. The queen will be the last to leave the colony. Usually she needs a little persuasion. Now fully awake, she searches the tunnels for her subjects. Only when she's convinced that no one's left will she depart. That can take 2 days. Sometimes the queen never emerges. But there's no doubt when she does appear. The queen is distinctly longer than her subjects. She actually develops extra vertebrae, no one knows how, to have space for more young. For Job, it's all in a day's work. And work itself is valuable here.
They are interested because I'm doing with them and I'm working with them. They are good animals, and because I'm earning something from them.
Held side by side, the differences are obvious. The long back and enlarged nipples. And with the queen out, the study can begin.
She's very thin. She's much longer.
It's back to the field laboratory for the routine work of data recording. Rosie measures the length of each mole rat, between 5 and 9 centimeters, depending on their role in the colony. Then she weighs them, on average 30 grams. Later, she'll compare this information with the data banks back at the Institute: departures, arrivals, age. Rosie takes a urine sample from each animal to do hormone tests. In the future, she'll be able to look back and see which animal developed to fulfill which task: queen, soldier, or the elusive runner. And her special knowledge can come in handy for the local farmers, because the mole rats don't actually kill their crops.
This is what the naked mole rats do.
Angalia vile mfuko huwa wanakula.
They make the holes in there,
Wanafanya mashimo hapo.
and then they put soil in back again. Because the tuber is still living, because they filled it up with the soil, they can eat some more after a long time.
Nafikiri pengine tunaweza kukushikia vile tunakuwa tukifanya.
But that just makes it worse for Rose. The mole rats ruin her sweet potatoes and never go away, in spite of all her efforts.
Wakati mwingine nakuanga na chembe kama hii, naangalia ikitupa mchanga mahali, naangalia na simu.
Rosie promises Rose she'll try to catch and relocate the colony later.
I think we need to take our traps and actually catch a few of them for her.
But mole rats have more dangerous enemies than farmers. A sand boa has discovered one of the colony's exit volcanoes and sensed the activity within. It feels like an invitation to lunch. But the mole rats have other ideas. The strongest soldiers are sent into action. While the workers flee to distant chambers, the soldiers bare their teeth and wait for an exposed flank. If that doesn't work, the soldiers withdraw and the mole rats hurry to block the tunnel with pieces of earth. It's enough to see him off. Above ground, Rosie and Job change a tire punctured by an acacia thorn. It's another skill a researcher has to have in the bush. And today they have an appointment Rosie doesn't want to miss. A farmer has information that may help her crack the secret of the traveling mole rats. This is the legend of Fuku Mzungu, the white naked mole rat.
Fuku Mzungu, ukiona kama unakutana na ukiipata kwa njia inatembea usiku.
According to this Swahili legend, a mole rat found above ground at night is especially lucky. It means the mole rats are leaving the fields, so it's a guarantee of a good harvest. It's the first anecdotal evidence for Rosie that the mole rats leave the colonies to travel. Rosie's biggest frustration is that she can still only imagine the life of mole rats under the ground. So she's decided to create a miniature mole rat world as authentic as possible. Will the traveling mole rats be identified by their behavior within the colony? Rosie and Job set to work, using local materials. First, dig up a termite hill. It's held together by termite saliva, which contains a soluble glue ideal to build with. The crumbled earth is softened with water to make a kind of clay. Africans use this to build homes, but not usually for naked mole rats. Instead of making mud bricks, they're building a film set. Cardboard boxes hold the compressed earth together. Toilet rolls serve as molds for the tunnels. Now it has to be left to dry. Then the cardboard molds can be removed and the all-important set dressing can begin. Job decorates the tunnels with roots and tubers, a mole rat's dream, and a little something to encourage them to perform. But will the stars cooperate? They need time to get used to their surroundings. But even then, things don't go quite according to plan. Rosie records her little charges too. Naked mole rats turn out to have 18 different calls, each with its own meaning, an extraordinary number for a rodent. And even more strangely, they sound exactly like birdsong. Naked mole rats have very good hearing. Their sense of touch is acute as well. The whisker-like sensors on tail, feet and head help them to find their way in the dark tunnels. And their nakedness protects them from parasites, which like a furry coat to colonize. Rosie brings her videotapes and recordings to Stan Broader, her professor at the Mole Rat Unit at St. Louis. As they view together, they try to spot potential travelers or runners. Are they longer, heavier, more restless than the others? Rosie has her suspicions, but the films are inconclusive. So Rosie and the professor agree she will have to catch a runner in the act. She can't do that in the lab, or even in her prefabricated colony in Kenya. It has to be observed in the wild. Stan is concerned that what they see in the films isn't natural mole rat behavior. Scientists have learned that animals in captivity behave differently from animals in their natural habitat. And that seems to be particularly true of naked mole rats.
We found in the zoos and in the labs, if you add a little bit of difficulty to their life, all the other behaviors change. In the zoos, they call it enrichment. So if you mess with their minds, if you change the tunnels, if you block the tunnels, if you do things to frustrate them, that doesn't just change the behavior of getting rid of the blockage, it changes all kinds of behavior.
There's one last experiment in St. Louis. Rosie analyzes the urine tests to check the hormone levels of an entire colony. And she discovers that the mole rats with the highest hormone levels are bigger, fatter, and heavier than the others. Are these the mole rats that travel to replenish the gene banks of a distant colony? Now she's ready to test her theory in Meru National Park. But how can she find out if those bigger, fatter mole rats really do travel and gain acceptance in a foreign colony? The experiment she and Stan Broader have devised is a great example of lateral thinking. She needs to know if owls hunt mole rats, and for that she needs toy mole rats.
I can show with them that this grey back that they have is actually used for camouflage, which you only need if you're above ground, which is another proof that they're actually dispersing above ground.
But first she has to give her captured colonies their regular feed. They're kept warm and snug in communal boxes. They're covered by a sheet to protect them from snakes. As night falls, Rosie marks the places where she leaves the plastic mole rats. Some are standing on their 4 feet with their camouflaged backs in the air. Others are on their side or upside down, revealing a pink belly. They should be more visible to the owls. She'll have the answers in the morning. Everything suggests her theory about the travelling mole rats is right. The measurements, the hormone levels, the legends. But will there be proof? Does the mole rat Romeo really exist? The moment of truth. Some of the mole rats on their side and upside down have been attacked. That means that the owls recognize them and regard them as food. But most of the mole rats on all fours are untouched, suggesting that the grey backs really do work as camouflage, and mole rats do move above ground. Now she has to catch a runner red-handed, but that's something she can't do in fully wild conditions. Perhaps a fence set up on the path between two colonies will help. At dusk, a mole rat sets out. He wouldn't last a minute in the sun, and even at night he doesn't waste time. He must keep going until he walks into another colony's mini volcano. But tonight, there's something in the way. The smell of the fiberglass is unsettling to the mole rat. It worked. It's taken a long time, but Rosie has finally unlocked one of the mole rat's secrets: how they keep up the strength of their colonies. We still don't know what makes the travelers leave the colonies in the first place, or how they get past the new colony's defenses to be accepted by the Queen. But it looks as though these roaming rats and the fresh genes they bring have a lot to do with the legendary hardiness of the species, their long lives, and their tolerance of pain. Each of the 10,000 marked mole rats has contributed a piece to this particular puzzle. But now the mole rats and Rosie need to go home. Though for Rosie at least the work isn't over.
I have helped to reveal a few secrets about the naked mole rat's life, but as it is in research, if you reveal things and open and answer questions, then you open up more questions, and it will take a few more years to find out all about the naked mole rat.
The last task is to return all the mole rats to their colonies. The study will continue for many years yet, but already naked mole rats are among the best understood rodents in the world. Delivered to their familiar tunnel entrances, they sniff the home scent and barely hesitate before entering. For the time being, they're taking their secrets with them. Even after 160 years, these mammals that sound like birds and behave like insects have managed to keep a lot of secrets.